penguin beaches and welcome down to a warm and sunny Stony Point. Today we're going to do our show a little bit differently. My name is Jax, I'm going to be your naturalist down here. We have Flippy behind the camera and we have lots of plans in store for you today. So we're going to go have a look at our perfect ocean, which is sitting behind me. And today, Flippy and I want to take you back in time. But you can ask questions, so please do send us in your comments and questions using the hashtag WildEarth on Twitter. Submit your questions on our channels page, or you could just comment on this YouTube link. Kids under the age of 18, email us at kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. And you've spoken and we've listened, so we are going to give our dassies the attention they deserve today. We're also going to let you know why dassies are part of the key to understanding the past. So I'm very excited, so is Flippy. We're going to be shooting in some different locations today, and we're going to be taking you to the edge of the world. You can see that the wind has changed direction, so we have a bit of a lull today, which has resulted in some beautiful conditions. And if you did watch the show yesterday, you can see it is night and day. But let's go have a look at the weather forecast and see what the weatherman says today. And where I'm standing today might not seem all that interesting, but we are standing on some really important history down here at Stony Point. And Flippy's going to move towards me now, and we're going to have a look down. And where we're standing right now is actually the site of an ancient stopping ground. And if you look down in most areas in Stony Point, you'll see dune spinach and you'll see sand. But down below us here, you'll see that we have a lot of fragments from shells. So these are not decorations put down here by Cape Nature. This is the site of a shell midden that's believed to be over 2,000 years old. And this boardwalk was built on top of the shell midden, and there were paths made on top of the midden. If you have a look, we've got a ton of fragmented abalone shells, and that is the main shell that they would find in this midden here. There's also a couple of limpet shells and mussel shells in between.
Here at WildEarth, we promised great monthly prizes for our explorers, and this month is no exception. If you join our club before the 10th of July, then you stand a chance to win a fabulous Safari Guide online course brought to you by Bushwise Field Guides. They specialize in accredited safari guide training with courses tailored for the African safari lodge industry. Sign up to be a WildEarth explorer today and don't miss out on this life-changing opportunity.
And coming up in first place and officially named Bilo is Heart's Cub.
So we're still looking at the shell midden, and the shell midden was formed by likely hundreds of people over many, many years, stopping in this spot and collecting abalone out the ocean and discarding the shells here. And this is the shell midden of the San people, the early hunter-gatherers of South Africa. So the San people were nomadic. They didn't have a home. So their lifestyle was very conservationist in nature, in that they would move and they would exploit different areas whilst giving other areas time to recover. And so it's likely that the sand people here would go into the ocean, they would collect these shells. They might have done this at low tide, although abalone tends to be in slightly deeper waters these days. And it might not look like much to you, but middens like this can give us the keys to how people used to live in the past, what the climate was like when these people were around. And so the sand people who used to take from the ocean were also known as the strandlopers, and that is Afrikaans. The English translation would be the beach walkers. So they would still harvest from the land. They would eat your land animals and your land birds, use the plants for medicine. But they would also exploit the ocean, and it's not often spoken about. When we look at South African history and sand history, we often think of the sand paintings in the Drakensberg and their relationship with the eland. But it is lovely to be able to show you the stopover, and we're going to move along just a little bit and show you that there's a lot more shell where this comes from. So the boardwalk is built all along the shell midden. So if you walk with me, you'll get to see that all below us we have parts of the midden. And here you'll be able to see it quite nicely, and there's actually a penguin nest that is built in between the midden. So we're going to go down. Flippy's going to have a look and show you. And you'll see there's lots of infrastructure from the whaling era. But as people have walked along this midden, what they've done is they've eroded it away. The penguins are eroding it away. But to think of how many shells must have been left here to still have so many in the sand. Johnny, so that's a really good question. You're asking if the penguins ever cut their feet on the shells, and I don't believe so. I think penguins tread quite lightly, and I think their feet are quite rubbery, which allows them to not cut their feet on the shells. And I think what Flippy and I are going to do is we're going to slowly start to walk towards the edge of the world, or the edge of the Stony Point boardwalk, because that's where we want to spend most of our show. But what I want you to notice as we walk is how there's lots of shell midden here, but the further away we go from this point, the more you'll see sand and not shell fragments. And it's interesting to me that this was a stopover point, because it says right at the point, it's right at the end. So this might have given the early people here access to the kelp forests.
As our global WildEarth family grows, we know that many of you struggle to get your questions answered during the live safari. Going forward, we will be holding AMAs for our WildEarth explorers.
Join me, James Hendry, on the 22nd of June for a chance to ask me anything you want. All you have to do is go to wildearth.tv, sign up to be an explorer, and then meet me here after the sunset safari.
Your trekking is very good. What is the starting trekking? Just trek the leopard. You walk a little bit, you stop. You starting checking. Keep your hands, your neck up. Okay, your eyes. Listen for the birds. You follow the leopard. The leopard should see you first. You lose. Talk next year.
Ago, I can't imagine that cormorants would have lived here in the abundance that they do now. If early man would come to this spot, I think the birds would be a little bit wary. And of course, we know that the penguins are a recent arrival to Stony Point. They only arrived here in the 1980s. Long before European settlers came to the Western Cape, the sand would move up and down the coastline. They would stop in the different caves. This is now a seabird sanctuary. It's the perfect place for them to relax because people cannot access that area. And the site below us is actually now protected, so it's recommended that people don't walk on the shell midden because they're trying to preserve it. And we have our white-breasted cormorants who are still breeding. So I think most of the chicks are quite large now. I think we're coming to the end of their breeding season. When we move along a little bit later on, we'll see that we have some Cape cormorants around, and they are soon coming into their breeding season, which is quite exciting. We do also want to spend some time with our dassies today, and we're going to do that a little bit later on. Yesterday, Moonbeam Smith had a question about penguins sleeping under the water, which they don't do. They sleep at the surface. Darkwing lovers. So, to my knowledge, I can't think of any seabirds that have gone extinct very recently, although I'm sure that when I research it tonight and let Byron know, that there would be some. Seabirds are amongst the most threatened bird species in the world. The other day we had World Albatross Day, and so I went and had a look about that. And with the world albatrosses, there are 23 species of albatross in the world, and 22 of them are considered either vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered. And so Byron is going to be with you tomorrow, but what I'll do is I will go and have a look and let him know. And I think Flippy and I are slowly going to walk along, and what I really want you to pay attention to now is how the ground changes and how we go from an area with many shells to an area with very few. And so you can see this was still part of the shell midden below us here. And you can see the abalone shells. And abalone is a very tasty meat to many people. And so you can see that back in the day there was a lot of abundance here. It was a nice stopover point. So that's a very good question to ask, because we're not allowed to take anything from this location. So I believe that this falls under the heritage authorities, and nothing is allowed to be removed. So they did find a stone sort of shard in this midden. But humans, or not humans, but everyday people like us are not allowed to take things, and we shouldn't. I think we love to have souvenirs, and I'm guilty of this. When we go to places, we like to take something with us. But when we take away from old heritage sites, what we do is we actually take away pieces of what could be vital history. And I did history in school. I love history, and my history teacher always used to say the key to understanding the future is to look back at the past and look at the patterns of the past. And you could look at it in terms of what people do, but you could also look at it in terms of how the environment has changed and how that has impacted people over all the years. You can see we also have some artificial penguin domes and things like that in this area.
My name is Juan Pinto. I'm here for Safari Guide of the Year. I'm one of the judges. One of the categories in the competition is the walk, or the on-foot experience as you call it. And it's kind of the leveler. It's the experience that really is important for a guide to have, to be able to take people safely into the environment on a walk.
I've been fortunate to be working in the guiding industry for about 26 years now. I've also been fortunate enough to do 9 years of the 10 years as one of the judges, and the particular components that I do is the walking and the shooting exercises. If you're the winner, if you're going to be the winner, it's important to become an ambassador for the field guide industry and competitors in the future.
And Flippy and I are nearly at the spot that we want to film today, that I call the edge of the world, and we've never filmed a full show here. So if at all there was a name, Sam, so that's a really interesting question. You're asking us if we have invasive plant species, and we do have roykrans, which is a type of tree or shrub that grows here. And the roykrans is actually removed and then sometimes used as sort of as brush to be able to actually make penguin nests. So roykrans is a very common alien in the Western Cape. What I want us to do is go have a look at this dassie, because I think this dassie is soaked with fluid from its dorsal gland. So the spot that we're in today is the edge of the world. So if you've been watching Penguin Beach for a very long time, and any of our other presenters or our other naturalists have called it something different, let me know. But if nobody's claimed stake to the name, you really do feel like you are at the edge of the world here. This is a great place for us to spot whales and dolphins if there are any. We have some African penguins here. We've got lots of dassies around. And dassies have been around here as long as ancient people have been around. And so there's actually a lot of relationships between our history and that of dassies, which we'll be talking about in just a moment. I actually want to go have a look at this other dassie because he looks so relaxed. So I just want us to show him to you. He's got his feet crossed and everything. So Matt, we're going from a very grumpy dassie to a very relaxed animal. You can see his legs are crossed over. This dassie has not a worry in the world. And I do love how when the dassies rest, they seem to find a part that their body can just fit into. And dassies in a lot of ways are going to be the stars of today's show. We do promise to find you some penguins. We have dassie dynasties down here at Stony Point, and we'll have one big male who will be in charge of several females, so we call that a harem. And you've got one male who has several women that he mates with. And then there is usually also a dominant female in dassie social structures. So she's almost like the matriarch, and she will stand sentinel and make sure that the rest of the dassie family is safe. This dassie is now slightly more awake, less comfortable. Cenac, so the dassies love to sleep in the crevices at night. So the dassies will have little crevices where the whole family will go, and that will be their home. And this dassie in frame is now walking over what would be an old Cape cormorant nest. And it's very interesting because people used to eat dassies, and apparently in some places in Africa, dassies are still eaten. There's very little information about it. And Flippy and I have been speaking about it before the show, because Flippy's actually done projects where he has had to catch dassies, and he says it is no easy feat. You wouldn't go to a burrow and stick your hand in not a burrow, that's the wrong term. You wouldn't go to sort of a hidey hole in between the rocks where the dassies would hang out and put your hand in there, because the dassies would bite you. So to be able to catch catch a dassie, you'd have to sort of entrap them somehow. But we've got something very exciting to tell you about that later on.
We know that there's nothing worse than just as your favorite leopard is about to catch his first meal in 3 days, you are on the edge of your seat and up pops an advert. But as you know, a life without advertising would mean a very boring evening when you arrive home from work. Because WildEarth and most other media companies rely on advertising in order to fund our content. But we want to let you know that we hear you. And to show you how much we care about your experience in nature, you can watch WildEarth without the ads. Sign up to be an explorer and watch the channel on the WildEarth website completely ad-free. Head over to our Explorer page to find out more. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
And I am so excited to be able to share this with you all today. Nikita, so sometimes the dassies go close to the penguins, and the penguins will make sure that the dassie knows who's boss, and they will chase them away slightly. But for the most part, this is a very harmonious relationship. And I've got something very exciting to show you about dassies in a book. And so we were talking about early man, and we were talking about the past earlier on. And so people used to eat dassies. And what they found is that they were actually able to discover where people were living and at what time of year, what month people were living in particular places by looking at the skulls of baby dassies. So the book that I have for you today is a book with baby dassie skulls in them. And it's so interesting. Flippy and I were having coffee before the show and we were talking about it. So Flippy's going to have a nice close look at the book. And we are going to show you the skulls of these little dassies. And so in the first year of life, the dassie teeth will take shape at different times, and the incisors of the dassies come in only about 6 months after the dassie has been born. And so by looking at the stage of development in the teeth of young dassies, they can see at what month that dassie died, because most of the dassies in this area are born in November. And so if they find dassie skulls in shell middens, they can have a look and see what the teeth look like, at what stage the teeth are in, particularly in the first year when these little dassies are growing. And then they could say that people were visiting that site very often, let's say in July or August, for example. And to my knowledge, there haven't been any dassie skulls found in any sites in this area. But who would have thought that dassies had clues to actually tell us a little bit about people and the movements of people back in the day? I thought that was an incredibly ingenious way to actually understand the movements of early people, because early people would move with the seasons. Some areas would be very plentiful in the summertime, others in the wintertime. But now you know what a dassie skull looks like, should you ever find one. And we're going to move away from the book now, and we're going to go have a look at some dassies. And very soon we'll also look at another clue that dassies leave that can provide us with information about the past. Flippy was laughing at me earlier because we were having this realization, and when we did, I said that dassies are really like a key, but with their fat little bodies and all that fluff, you wouldn't really think to put them in a keyhole and unlock information. The other thing that dassies do is dassies have middens. So they tend to go to the bathroom in the same place, and they tend to use that same place for thousands of years. And what scientists can do is they can go and have a look at this fossilized dassie dung, and they can look at the pollen in that dung, and so they can see what plants lived when and how the climate has changed over thousands of years. And we're going to have a look at that dassie dung that is kind of in front of us now. So we're slowly going to move towards it. This isn't the best example of a dassie midden. By breakwater we have much better examples that we will show you in weeks to come. But you'll see that that spot is frequented by dassies. They seem to like to go there. And I haven't found much research about it, but I'm sure that the smells of these middens must have something to do with their social structure.
The Safari Guide of the Year 2022 is approaching us rapidly. This year, we'll be heading to Bushwise Field Guides at the Southern African Wildlife College from the 27th June till the 2nd of July. We will soon meet all our contestants who are vying for the prize of being the very best of the best, and the judges who will put them through their paces. Join me, Steve Falconbridge, as we dream it, guide it, win it.
If you would like to be a part of the team that shares the wildebeest migration in Kenya live on WildEarth, then we have some great news for you. There are a few places left to join our expeditions in August and September this year. You'll be staying in an exclusive tented camp with ensuite bedrooms nestled in the riverine woodlands of the Talek River. Head over to our website to book your bucket list experience today. WildEarth Expeditions. Travel with purpose.
So we have moved away from our dassies and towards my favorite cormorant species. So the edge of the world is a great place to watch the Cape cormorants. Melissa, cormorant nests do get washed away. I've not seen it at Stony Point, but I've seen it on Giza Rock. There's a shipwreck there called the Prince Port, and the keel of the ship, so it's like the big wooden bit, is sitting on the rock, and the bank cormorants always make their nests there. And then every year when you've got a big storm, it washes the nests clean off the Prince Port. But these Cape cormorants would lay there, or they would make their nests exactly where you see them sitting, which is quite far away from the waterline. And so I think they'd be unlikely to be washed off there. And this will very soon be the site of their nesting activities. And I'm hoping that we'll get a nice close-up of one of these Cape cormorants, because to me they really are the prettiest cormorant we have here. They have stunning turquoise eyes. And that orange gape is also beautiful. The other day when Igor and I picked up that juvenile Cape cormorant, Igor was completely enamored by the eyes. He didn't realize they were that blue. I think he fell a little bit in love with the Cape cormorants, and they do have a sneaky way of making you do that. And that cormorant does not want Flippy to film him. He's hiding behind the rock now. That other cormorant is in what looks like a nesting spot, and he's communicating with another Cape cormorant there. So when they move their heads like that, they are talking to one another, and that looks like the perfect spot for a little nest. And they can have up to 7 chicks in a nest, so their nests are usually pretty large. Look! We're seeing it happen! This is so special. We're seeing the start of the Cape cormorant breeding season. The birds slowly starting to potter around with the nesting material. And a lot of birds will scope out a nesting site for quite a while before they'll actually establish their nest there. It's kind of like when you're buying a house. You'll go and you'll have a look at several houses and sometimes visit a house more than once. Often visit a house more than once, I should hope. And we're hoping to get a nice, good look at this Cape Cormorant sitting here. But this cormorant has other plans for us. So you can see the nice quartzite rocks. This cormorant is giving its head a bit of a scratch now. And there you can see the orange gape of the cormorant very nicely. It's very interesting that they don't nest where all the other cormorants do. They seem to really love these rocks that are otherwise very barren. And you can see evidence of them sitting around by the guano. So all those white lines on the rocks are them sitting about. Monique, so I would love to go to Wales to watch seabirds. I'm quite jealous that you get to go and do that. Off the coast of the UK, there are just the most incredible seabirds. I've got a very good friend of mine who lives in the south of England, and she always makes me very jealous with her bird watching expeditions. And you can see more often than not, if there's one Cape Cormorant, there are several. I just think that's such a beautiful sight with the water behind them.
Here at WildEarth, we promised great monthly prizes for our explorers, and this month is no exception. If you join our club before the 10th of July, then you stand a chance to win a fabulous Safari Guide online course brought to you by Bushwise Field Guides. They specialize in accredited safari guide training with courses tailored for the African safari lodge industry. Sign up to be a WildEarth explorer today and don't miss out on this life-changing opportunity.
And coming up in first place and officially named Mbilo is Heart's Cub.
I think it's about time that we find you some penguins to have a look at. And I think we're just going to take a wide view of everything, and you can see how beautiful and desolate this spot is, and then we'll slowly make our way towards our African penguins who are sitting on the rocks very far away from it all. We've got a nice big group of penguins sitting there. And you'll see very wild rocks and some fairly big waves coming in. So the question I misheard yesterday was penguins sleeping under the water, and penguins would sleep at the surface because penguins are what we call positively buoyant. So positively buoyant is a very fancy way to say that people float, or that whatever it is floating. People, penguins, life jackets. Neutrally buoyant, it means that you're not floating or sinking. And negatively buoyant means that you sink. And these are the more antisocial of penguins, very far away from all the people and from all the busyness. And every single one of them seems to be very relaxed. So fairy penguins, I guess, might be called furry penguins because of their size, but I'm not sure that's 100% the correct answer. So I've got lots of unanswered questions to hand over to Byron for tomorrow. I would say it's because of their size, because they are the smallest of all the penguins in the world. Flippy, do you have any idea? Flippy's shaking his head at me. So we'll go and have a look, and then Byron will let you know tomorrow. I have also mentioned to Byron, I know that you all would love to see some more fynbos, but I've said before that I do fynbos an injustice compared to Byron because he is so passionate about it. So hopefully he'll be doing some fynbos with you on his shows to come. I've also had some requests. It seems that you guys would like a little bit more geology, so we will be doing that in the coming weeks, looking at the rocks and talking about them. These penguins are just enjoying the rocks. And just above them we also have a family of Egyptian geese who seem to be enjoying the outer lying areas too.
As our global WildEarth family grows, we know that many of you struggle to get your questions answered during the live safari. Going forward, we will be holding AMAs for our WildEarth explorers.
Join me, James Henry, on the 22nd of June for a chance to ask me anything you want. All you have to do is go to wildearth.tv, sign up to be an explorer, and then meet me here after the sunset safari.
So what we've just seen is really one of the greatest sights of the Cape Coast, and that is a V-shaped formation of Cape cormorants who are flying about and looking for some fish. Don't think I'll ever grow tired of that sight. But what Flippy and I would love to do now is we would love to show you a lighthouse, because we don't really get to do that on the show. So you can see it's extremely hazy today. So it's not mist or fog, but it's a bit of haze coming in. You can see a very rugged stretch of coastline. And then if you're going to look really carefully towards the right, you'll see the lighthouse through all the haze. And that is Huncliffe Lighthouse, and it was set up back in the 1960s. And apparently it only took 6 days to build that lighthouse. So most of the points along the Cape Coast, you'll have a lighthouse like this one. This one is not managed by people anymore. It's managed remotely from Cape Point. And it's still operational, so at night, if you had to come stand here, you would see the light flicker. And lighthouses are still used by ships and boats today to be able to make sure that they're not too close to shore. A lot of the lighthouses also have a foghorn, which is really quaint. So when we've got thick fog, you'll hear the horn. And this looks like the cover of a book about someone taking a holiday to somewhere desolate. Just wanted to be able to give you a view of that, and I think we'll move back towards the sea, towards the animals we have closer to us, and see what else the animals might be getting up to today. This looks very desolate, but if you have a closer look, we actually have a variety of different species that enjoy the edge of the world. And I see that nobody has told me that it has another name, so I'll happily be telling the boys that this is now what it's called. I'm trying to have a closer look at this Cape Cormorant. So you can see the light just catching that orange gape and the blue eye. And often when you see seabirds pitter-patter with their feet, which this bird was doing, they are scoping out their nesting spot. And you can see they're constantly aware of their surroundings and what the other Cape Cormorants are doing. I've mentioned before, they're by far the most social of cormorant species. And Vince, they are born with, it's not orange. I think they develop the orange just before they fledge. But that bright orange only really develops once they get their full adult colors and they go into their breeding season. So if you have a look at this Cape Cormorant now, this Cape Cormorant is really shiny, and that orange is particularly obvious. This cormorant doesn't want to be looked at very, very intensely. He keeps moving away. He's going out to sea now, so maybe there's a chance there might be some fish about. But I think that most of these cormorants have gone into their molt, so they've started molting, and so their feathers are very bright in color, and that gape is very orange to indicate that they are ready to mate. Gone back to have a look at the Dassie, and that seems to be a very popular spot. This is a bit of a smaller Dassie than the one we were looking at earlier on today. You never really look at a Dassie and think that's definitively a baby. I think we'll have to wait until November to get a better look at that. So we have moved on to looking at this Dassie, but Vince, to answer your question properly, they're not born with that orange on the face. They will develop it as they age, and then it will become its brightest when they are in their breeding colors. And I'm hoping we can go to that very last rock and have a look at those cormorants, because they were showing us some interesting behavior. And they've just stopped. They've all gone back to cleaning themselves. You can see they've got a little bit of a claw on their foot that allows them to give their face a nice scratch. You can see that orange gape very nicely. So you see the underside of the face of this cormorant. And these are the major producers of guano. So where penguins have their nests, it was the Cape cormorants who would really produce the guano that would allow for them to dig into the guano and burrow. Penguins and other birds also produce guano. The numbers of Cape cormorants would be substantially larger on these island colonies where the penguins used to breed. And I think the question we had yesterday was asking about what the different cormorants eat. And for these guys, it's sardine and anchovy that we would see them enjoying. But I see we've got some gular fluttering happening towards the left. So I think we might move over to another group of Cape cormorants and have a look. This very last cormorant sitting on the rock was fluttering his gular, so he's feeling the heat today.
We know that there's nothing worse than just as your favorite leopard is about to catch his first meal in 3 days, you are on the edge of your seat and up pops an advert. But as you know, a life without advertising would mean a very boring evening when you arrive home from work. Because WildEarth and most other media companies rely on advertising in order to fund our content. But we want to let you know that we hear you. And to show you how much we care about your experience in nature, you can watch WildEarth without the ads. Sign up to be an explorer and watch the channel on the WildEarth website completely ad-free. Head over to our Explorer page to find out more. WildEarth Explorers, it's in your nature.
Flippy and I would love to show you one of our smallest animals down here at Stony Point. Someone we haven't had on the show in quite some time. We tend to forget about these little guys. And as I say that, he's decided he doesn't want to be on the show because he's just disappeared behind a rock. But we were looking at a Cape wagtail. We'll see if we can find another one, or if he'll come out from behind the rock. So earlier on we were talking about the hunter-gatherers, the sand people, and the wagtail is an animal that was very respected by the San. And he really has decided that he doesn't want to be involved today. There he is. He might be coming out for us. There we go. There's the Cape wagtail. I think we're going to take a wider view again because he's hiding between the rocks and he's likely trying to find all the little bugs that live between the dune spinach and are attracted by the birds and by the dassies. You do have some people walking by, so you might feel that the camera's a little bit shaky. On the edge of the rocks there we have a kelp gull standing sentry and making sure that nothing goes unnoticed. And the cormorant standing nice and close and just preening itself. I always find it interesting because the kelp gull is the enemy of all the other birds. They will steal the eggs, they'll steal the chicks. And yet the other birds do tend to allow them in close proximity. Now, penguins have decided to not move a muscle today. They don't seem to move all that much in this spot. I think they're not very close to the water. So I think this is the perfect spot just to rest. This is the spot where they can almost have a mini holiday. They don't have to move out of the way of other penguins coming in. Just have a nice, relaxing moment on the seashore. What's interesting to me is that it seems to be mostly adult penguins there. I don't actually see any juveniles, any molting juveniles or young birds sitting there. I don't know where their access to the water is, because I think we're going to have a look at the waves, and I certainly wouldn't come back in here if I was a penguin. So I wonder if those penguins are from the nests that are behind us, and if they just make their way to that spot to enjoy the rocks and the sun. And today is a beautiful weather day. But the sea is not 100% calm. There's no wind, but that is still a fairly strong sea.
The Safari Guide of the Year 2022 is approaching us rapidly. This year, we'll be heading to bushwise field guides at the Southern African Wildlife College from the 27th June till the 2nd of July. We will soon meet all our contestants who are vying for the prize of being the very best of the best, and the judges who will put them through their paces. Join me, Steve Falconbridge, as we dream it, guide it, win it.
If you would like to be a part of the team that shares the wildebeest migration in Kenya live on WildEarth, then we have some great news for you. There are a few places left to join our expeditions in August and September this year. You'll be staying in an exclusive tented camp with ensuite bedrooms nestled in the riverine woodlands of the Talek River. Head over to our website to book your bucket list experience today. WildEarth Expeditions. Travel with purpose.
In South Africa, we have a saying, like a Dassie in the sun, when anything from a dog to a human enjoys their time in the sun. And this is exactly why we say that. This Dassie looks like he's having the most fantastic time. He's kind of looking at us now. When I was growing up, there was a folklore story about Dassie and why Dassie has no tail. And it was because Dassie was too lazy to go fetch his own tail. Lisa, so to my knowledge, I don't think Dassies can swim. I think I found an article that said something about Dassies swimming, but I couldn't find any actual evidence of it. So I'm not going to say there's absolutely no chance, because there was, I remember something very faint about it, but then I remember trying to look into it and not finding any actual proof. I think it would be very unlikely that they would be able to swim. Their bodies are not designed for it at all, with those short little legs. I think maybe if they are fairly fatty, which I was trying to figure out, so I don't know how fatty a Dassie actually is. I think it's difficult to say. They don't regulate their own body heat very well. So I've just had a comment, and this is also why it's lovely to have always more than one guide and more than one nature lover in a place, because Marcel, who is usually at Djuma but is currently at our director's office, says he has seen a Dassie swim. So you can search the internet and not find evidence, but if you ask the people that you know, then that's often the best way to find information. You wouldn't believe it, but there's so much that I've learned about specifically the ocean from guests who've come out on boats with me, and they're either scuba divers or they've traveled more than I have. And so you can learn something from everyone, and I think that's the best way to learn, is actually to talk to people, because you can only read so much, but what people have seen with their eyes is often so much more valuable. Look at the little front teeth. This Dassie is too cute.
Here at WildEarth, we promised great monthly prizes for our explorers, and this month is no exception. If you join our club before the 10th of July, then you stand a chance to win a fabulous Safari Guide online course brought to you by Bushwise Field Guides. They specialize in accredited safari guide training with courses tailored for the African safari lodge industry. Sign up to be a WildEarth explorer today and don't miss out on this life-changing opportunity.
And coming up in first place and officially named Mbilo is Heart's Cub.
I really feel like today's show has just flown by. In only a few minutes, we're going to send you over to our team at Djuma and at Pridelands. James is heading out to see what he can find. He's got no distinct plans. Liam is hoping to head to Simbambili, and he also has nothing that he'd really like to spot, but Chris is hoping to see if he can find anything on that cheetah again. So they've got some fun plans in store for you over at Safari. We're going to have a look at the sea to see what else we can find. Maybe we'll spend our last couple of moments looking at our dassies. We hope that you guys had a great time with us today and that you learned something new and something different. I know that I certainly tend to overlook the dassies and the fun that they bring to our Penguin Beach shows. I think we've got some lovely, lovely views of them today out here at the World's Edge. And I am not going to be with you tomorrow. You're going to have the wonderful Byron. I'm sure he is itching to be back and chatting to you all. But I will be back with you on Friday and over the weekend. Flippy is here still for the next few days. And we've got a couple of unanswered questions that I am going to be handing over to Byron, so he'll be answering that for you all tomorrow. And on behalf of all of our team, Flippy, myself, our directors, and Marcel, who can definitively say that dassies do swim, we would love to thank you for your continued support. We love that you watch us every day. We love that you ask us questions. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy tomorrow, and I will see you again on Friday. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's spend those last few moments looking at some wildlife.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.